What's up, everybody? It's Jordan, and welcome to the Sports Dude Hines Show. Today is December 16th, 2021, and on today's video, I'm joined by special guest TJ Shoemaker. How you doing today, TJ?
Jordan, I'm good. I appreciate you having me on once again, and I'm excited, as always, to talk about some college football.
Yeah, there is so much college football, news, rumors, games to talk about. This is the best time of the year to be a college football fan, besides the beginning of the college football season. This is bowl season. There's so many, coaching carousel, people switching from school to school, transfer portal, everything like that. And, the bowl games actually start tomorrow. There's a few games that are tomorrow. So that's kind of going to be what we're going to be talking about in today's video. Our bowl pick'ems for, each bowl game and the national championship game and the playoffs and everything like that. So we'll go ahead and get started here with some of the lesser big games that, start tomorrow in the next several days. So some of these games are in the Bahamas Bowl. There is Middle Tennessee against Toledo in the Bahamas Bowl. In the Cure Bowl, there's Coastal Carolina against Northern Illinois. Then in the Boca Raton Bowl, there is Appalachian State against West Kentucky. So who do you have in those three games?
I would probably go with Toledo over Middle Tennessee. I just don't have a lot of faith in Middle Tennessee's offense or defense, to be honest with you. As for the other bowls, what was the second one that you said? The Cure Bowl?
Cure Bowl between Coastal Carolina and Northern Illinois.
Yeah, I would probably go with Coastal in that. I'm assuming that Grayson McCall is going to be a quarterback for Coastal. So, if that's the case, I would definitely go with Coastal in that one. And then Western Kentucky and Appalachian State, that's actually a pretty intriguing matchup. You've got the high-flying Western Kentucky offense versus the more run-heavy and defensive Appalachian State team. That's tough, but I hate to go against Conference USA, but I really like Appalachian State in that matchup.
Yeah, for me, these first three games, Middle Tennessee, they've kind of been on a winning streak as of late, winning most of their games to even get bowl eligible. But it's one of those times where, they're not bad, but I don't think they're good enough to be really a bowl eligible team. This is one of those games where I feel like it's kind of a bad idea that we have so many bowls, that some of these teams, despite being like a 6-6 or 7-5, they're really not that good. I'll take Toledo in that one. Cure Bowl, it's hard for me to go against Coastal Carolina, regardless if McCall plays or not. They're one of the best Group of 5 teams. And the Boca Raton Bowl between Appalachian State and West Kentucky, I honestly believe was one of the most underrated matchups in this entire bowl season.
Yeah, I agree.
Appalachian State, who was in the Sun Belt Conference Championship game, they obviously lost to Louisiana. And West Kentucky was also in their conference championship game in Conference USA. West Kentucky, to me, you look at it, they've scored over 70 points the last 2 games. They're one of the better, more underrated teams in the country. I feel like you look at their record, I think they are better than what their record indicates them. I don't know the spread in this game, but I'll take West Kentucky and the upset in that one.
Yeah, man. It's hard to go against Western Kentucky's offense. That's probably a safe bet. I kind of went with Appalachian State just because I think that if they can do, some similar things that Marshall did against Western Kentucky in the first half of that game, I think that Appalachian State could really slow down that offense. But, if not, if they can't figure out Bailey Zappi and that offense, then I think, it could be a long day for them.
Yeah, and this is these are two teams who have been severely underrated when it comes to Group of 5 conversations the last several years. And, West Kentucky, they've had some crazy games over the past years, in the Bahamas Bowl years ago, the Marshall game years ago. They are known to having, high-scoring games and great games. That should be a good one. A couple other games here, the New Mexico Bowl between Fresno State and Utep, the Independence Bowl at BYU against UAB, in the Lending Tree Bowl, Eastern Michigan against Liberty. In those, I'll take Fresno State. I know UTEP, this is the first time they've been relevant since like a decade, it seems like, since they had Jordan Palmer. But Fresno State, they're a more consistent team. They're normally pretty decent. I'll take them. Independence Bowl, I'll take BYU. UAB is good, but I don't think they've played great teams. You look at it, they barely squeaked by Marshall, and Marshall isn't great. They've lost to some other good teams they've played. UAB, it seems like when they've played against these top profile teams, they've struggled. So I'll take BYU in that one. And the Lending Tree Bowl, I'll take Liberty. It's hard for me to bet against Malik Willis against a small team like Eastern Michigan.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you on all three of those. I got Fresno, BYU, and Liberty also. The one thing to watch out for, I haven't really paid too much attention to it, but I'm not sure if Malik Willis is going to play in that game. So, that's something to maybe research whenever we get off here. But if he plays in it, obviously I would go with Liberty. If he doesn't, I've watched Eastern Kentucky a couple of times this year, and they're not bad. I mean, they're decent on both sides of the ball. They don't wow you in any one aspect, but they did beat a couple of good MAC teams this year that they were underdogs in. So, that's something to watch out for if Malik Willis plays. But I guess we'll just have to wait and see and see how that one plays out.
You mentioned Malik Willis possibly opting out of this game, and with his draft stock, it could take a hit if he has a bad game. It was just announced the past hour or so ago that Kenny Pickett and Kenneth Walker, two big time players from in the Peach Bowl, both of those guys are not going to be playing in that game. So maybe we can see a similar situation with Malik Willis. The next game up here is the Los Angeles Bowl, Oregon State and Utah State. I'll take Oregon State in this one. There's not many games that are Group of 5 against Power 5, but most of them I want to be picking the Power 5 because some of these Group of 5 teams, they are inconsistent. And the next game after that is the New Mexico Bowl. Louisiana. Billy Napier's former team going against Marshall. Despite Louisiana's most of their coaching staff, it seems like they're not even on their roster anymore. It's hard for me to bet against Louisiana, a team who's ranked right now. They have been criminally underrated the past several years. And they're going up against a Marshall team who, in my opinion, has kind of underachieved this season, finishing 7-5. You look at all their losses are the teams who were bowl eligible this season. It pains me to say it, but I have to go to Louisiana in this one over Marshall. So in these two, I have Oregon State and that one, and then I also have Louisiana beating Marshall, and basically a home game for them.
Yeah, man, I'm right there with you. I agree with both of those. I'm going to go with Oregon State and Louisiana also. And it pains me to take Louisiana over Marshall as I have Marshall season tickets and everything. But when you look at where they're at with these prospective programs, Doc Holliday basically put this Marshall roster together. Well, you had Billy Napier and that staff that put this Louisiana roster together. So, based off of that, I'm going to go with the rosters, and I think Louisiana right now has the better one. So, and Levi Lewis is a pretty good quarterback too. So I'm going to go with Louisiana. Like you said, at home, basically.
So the next couple of games up here, the Myrtle Beach Bowl, Old Dominion against Tulsa. There's also the famous Idaho Potato Bowl, Kent State against Wyoming, and the Frisco Bowl against San Diego State and UTSA. To me, I'll go Tulsa, Old Dominion. Like I said, they're one of those teams who doesn't necessarily deserve a bowl game. I'll go Kent State in the Idaho Bowl. And he's a nice draft Sincere McCormick. But I would take Tulsa, Kent State, and San Diego State in those three games.
Yeah, I'm going to actually go with Tulsa, Wyoming, and UTSA. UTSA, I feel like they've just been too hot all year. I think that they really want to end the year on a good note, and I think that this game is bigger to them than most people realize. So I'm going to go with them, and what I would assume would be an upset. I'm not sure. I haven't looked at the spread in that, but I would assume that probably San Diego State is favored, but I'm not sure.
Mount West Conference champion. So I could definitely see them with a possible upset.
Jordan, you're cutting out on me. I don't know if you can hear me.
And then another bowl here. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you're kind of in and out.
Is it better now?
Yeah, it's better.
All right. So the Armed Forces Bowl, Army in Missouri. I'll take Can you hear me?
Yeah, now I can. You went out for a minute again.
All right. So who do you have between Army in Missouri and Miami, Ohio, and North Texas?
Army in Missouri. I'm going to go with Missouri. I'm not sure if Tyler Beatty is going to play for Missouri. If so, I would like them. I like their ability to run the ball over Army. Let's see. What was the next game you said? Was it the Frisco?
Yeah, Miami, Ohio, and North Texas.
Yeah, I'm going to take North Texas. Ever since they lost to Marshall, North Texas kind of flipped a switch, and they really just turned it on. And I think that they've got a lot of momentum to end the season, so I'm going to go with them to beat Miami. And then what was the last game that you said? I'm sorry.
That was the Missouri, Miami, Ohio, North Texas.
Sorry, you're cutting out on me
again.
All right? Yeah, there you are.
All right. So there is some big news. The next game up here is Florida and UCF, and there was some big news coming out of Gainesville. The past couple of days, starting quarterback Emory Jones was announced that he will be entering the training against UCF. So what are your kind of Emory Jones transfer portal and everything like that?
Well, as far as the news, I think it was pretty expected. I don't think that it caught anybody off guard that he was going to transfer. I think he kind of saw the writing on the wall that it was going to be Anthony Richardson's team moving forward. And as far as potential placements for where he could end up, I'm not sure of any one particular school. I think as far as just a basic type of place that he could end up, I could see him possibly going to a lower Power 5 or higher Group of 5 school. And one team that, I don't know why, but this team kind of intrigues me with Emory Jones is Cincinnati. They're losing Desmond Ridder. I think that Emory Jones could really step right in at a place like Cincinnati and, keep some of their success going into next season. So, like I said, I haven't heard any rumors about potential destinations, but that's just one place that, if I were Emory Jones, I would possibly reach out and see if that interest is mutual.
Yeah, I think Cincinnati makes a lot of sense. That's a team I've thought of a couple of times. And I know we were talking the other day, and I mentioned a team I think is kind of a dark horse, and I think it's Nebraska. And you look at Nebraska, they're losing Martinez. He's transferring to Kansas State. And this is Scott Frost. He has one final year to prove that he is a good coach for the Cornhuskers. They've kind of lacked, consistent quarterback play. Martinez, he's one of the best quarterbacks in Nebraska history. But aside from him, they've not had anything great the last several years. I feel like if you add Emory Jones to Nebraska right now, they could really, light a fuel in their team. They've had so many games where they've had one possession losses this past year. I feel like if you add Jones to Nebraska, I feel like that's really a match made in heaven for Jones and Nebraska because, despite losing one of the best quarterbacks you've had in school history, you're gaining probably one of the best quarterbacks in this portal out there right now. I think Jones to the Cornhuskers makes a lot of sense. I don't think it will happen though, because like you said, Cincinnati makes a lot of sense as well. But with all the craziness we've seen the past couple of weeks in college football, it seems like anything can happen at this point.
Yeah, man. I mean, college football is crazy, and I mean, it's just so unpredictable. I mean, there's been things that have happened that no one saw happening. So, who knows? Maybe Emory Jones might find himself at a bigger school than what we're thinking. Maybe some sort of kind of lateral move, I guess you could say, from Florida. But at the moment, I don't see a team like that. But you never know. I mean, crazier things have happened.
And it's interesting because, you look at Jeff Driscoll. He was never great at Florida, but he went to Louisiana Tech. And then you also look at Felipe Franks, who is kind of similar to Jeff Driscoll, is like he had the potential, but he never really, he was never really consistent. And he ended up going to a, SEC school in Arkansas. So
Right.
you don't really know where Emory Jones fits in between those two guys. I feel like obviously he's going to be higher than a Louisiana Tech type of team, but maybe kind of that Arkansas level type of team, like Arkansas,
Yeah.
Nebraska, one of those teams who they're not a bad group of five, Power Five, but they're one of those teams who are in the rise. And if you add Emory Jones to your team, they could be one of the better teams in their conference.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, and when I mentioned lower Power Five, I'm thinking like I'm just using these as an example, but like Missouri or South Carolina, or which actually Spencer Rattler just went to South Carolina, so I don't think Emory Jones is going there. But just as an example, that type of caliber of team, I think is somewhere that Emory Jones could end up, or like I said, he could go to a higher group of five team like Cincinnati or someone like that, or you and I have talked about it, even a place like Marshall. I think he would be a great fit there. And we've talked about the NIL stuff, and how he could be that premier name at a place like Marshall. But I think the rest just remains to be seen at this point. We'll have to just wait and see where Emory ends up. Jordan, I think I lost you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
All right, that completely sucked. So some technical difficulties. My Wi-Fi is messing up a ton. So we kind of talked about, Emory Jones and his possible landing spot where he will go, and it's very interesting because I feel like this Florida game between UCF. I kind of mentioned earlier that West Kentucky is going to be a good game between Appalachian State. I feel like this has potential to be a great game with the Gators against the Knights. This is one of those games UCF has been waiting years to play Florida, and I think they're very fortunate this year where Florida is not as good as they have been in years past. Emory Jones, I think he's expected to start this game. Richardson won't be playing. It kind of pains me to say it again, but my other team losing. But I don't see Florida winning this game. I feel like UCF, they are prepared for this game like they have been for years. Like I mentioned, I'm going to take UCF to beating Florida in this one.
This is one of those games that I feel like could go either way. I think it's going to come down to the mindset of Florida. I think athlete for athlete, I think they have the edge. But as far as, where are they going to be at mentally within their preparation and that type of thing? So, how focused is Emory Jones going to be? He's already announced that he's going to be transferring, but he is going to be playing in the bowl game. So, is he going to come out careless because of that? Or is he going to come out and say, this is my last game as a Florida Gator. I want to leave on a good note. So, it's just unpredictable at this point. Everything about Florida's program for the past year has been unpredictable. And, I'm expecting a good game as well. A lot of these players probably played against each other in high school and that type of thing. So, there's somewhat of a rivalry already established. And obviously UCF has been waiting to get their chance against Florida. And, what better time to get them than when they don't have a head coach on the sidelines or really a real staff on the sidelines. So it's one of those things where it's kind of a lose-lose for Florida. If you win the game, well, you were supposed to. If you lose the game, then, the joke's on you, I guess. So, I'm concerned about Florida and their mentality in this game. So, like I said, whichever Florida team shows up, it's going to determine whether they win or lose. But, I'm hoping that they can come out with the win. And I think basically from what I saw against Florida State, I think that they still have a little bit of pride in the tank. So I'm going to pick Florida, but I'm going to pick them, by a narrow margin, maybe a field goal or a touchdown or less, basically.
Yeah, and you said it, spot on. You don't know what type of Florida team you're going to see. I mean, are you going to see the Florida team who lost to Alabama by just 2 points? Or are you going to see the Florida team who somehow ended up losing to Missouri or just having those embarrassing games to end the season? I mean, Florida's one of those teams when they're one of the better teams in the country, but they haven't shown that a lot this season. But when they are off, they are absolutely horrendous. It should be a great game. And, some of the other games here we have with the bowls, let me see here. We have Hawaii against Memphis, Ball State against Georgia State, Nevada against Western Michigan. So who are your kind of picks in those matchups?
I think I would go with Memphis over Hawaii, and then I would take Georgia State over Ball State, and that last one is a toss up for me. I guess I would go with Nevada. I really haven't watched either one of those teams a whole lot. I've watched Nevada a couple of times, and sometimes their offense is clicking, and I think that if they show up on the right day and their offense is moving the ball and being explosive, then I think that they can definitely win. So I'm going to go with Nevada just on a hunch.
With the Hawaii and Memphis game, Memphis is down like in years. They're not really down like they should. I mean, they are not playing what they normally are, but I'll still take Memphis over Hawaii. I'll take Ball State in the Camellia Bowl, and it's very interesting because Nevada and Western Michigan are both two very inconsistent teams. Western Michigan is one of the teams who beat Pittsburgh earlier this season, but they are not playing good at all. I'll take Nevada in that one. And a couple other games here. East Carolina against Boston College, Auburn against Houston, Air Force against Louisville. So those are three Power Five against Group of Fives. So who do you have in those three matchups?
Oh, man. That first one's tough. I think I'm going to go with the upset as far as, Group of Five versus Power Five here. I'm going to take ECU. ECU has kind of been a pleasant surprise for me this year. I think they've outperformed their expectations. And I'm going to go ahead and take them in the upset against Boston College. As for Auburn and Houston, Houston's played well all year. I know they got beat by Cincinnati a few weeks ago, but Cincinnati obviously is a really good team. And Auburn has kind of, been up and down all season. And with the recent, announcement of Bo Nix transferring and stuff, I don't know what the positivity or negativity even within that program is right now. So I'm going to go with Houston in that. And then the last one, Air Force in Louisville, I'm going to go with Louisville.
Yeah, actually, I want to pick East Carolina as an upset against Boston College. Houston and Auburn, Houston is one of the better Group of Five teams. They only have a couple of losses. One of the losses is to Cincinnati. Another one is to Texas Tech. Auburn, they are so inconsistent. I believe they started the season 5-2 or something like that, and they finished the year 6-6. They are not playing good right now. Then in the First Responder Bowl, I'll take Louisville over Air Force. Louisville is one of those teams that can be great one day, but absolutely horrendous the next day. They are very, very inconsistent. So some other games here in the Liberty Bowl, there's Mississippi State against Texas Tech, NC State against UCLA. There's Minnesota against West Virginia and SMU against Virginia. So who do you have in those matchups?
In the Liberty Bowl, I think I'm going to go with Mississippi State. You know, it's kind of ironic with Mike Leach going up against his old school, but I like Mississippi State's offense to really get going in this one and put up some points. In the Holiday Bowl, I'm going to go with. This is a tough one, but I'm going to go with UCLA. I like UCLA's ability to run the ball, and NC State kind of they kind of hit a brick wall towards the end of the season. They had a good little stretch there after beating Clemson, and then they kind of fell apart just a little bit. But I'm going to go with UCLA. In the next one, I'm going to go with Minnesota to beat West Virginia. You know, Minnesota had that big win towards the end of the season against Wisconsin to knock them out of the Big Ten championship contention. So I'm going to go with PJ Fleck's Gophers there. And then the last one in the Fenway Bowl, I'm going to go with SMU against Virginia. Virginia's defense struggled mightily all season, and I'm not sure if the quarterback Armstrong is going to be playing in that game. Even if he is, you know, I don't know if they can even keep up with the SMU offense. I mean, that SMU offense is pretty fun to watch. They can put up some points in a hurry.
Yeah, with Mike Leach, going up against Texas Tech, his former, school, that should be a good game. I would take Mississippi State in that one. NC State and UCLA. UCLA is very inconsistent. NC State, they're one of those teams who they have a good record, but I feel like their record is kind of deceiving. Every single time they've played against, one of these bigger programs, it seems like they end up losing. I'll take UCLA in the upsets. Minnesota against West Virginia. West Virginia is 6-6. Just had to win their last two games to even get bowl eligible. Minnesota, they're one of those teams who are so inconsistent. I mean, you mentioned they beat Wisconsin just a couple weeks ago, but earlier in the season, I believe they lost to Bowling Green. PJ Fleck is a good coach, but he's very inconsistent at times. Then in the Fenway Bowl, SMU against Virginia. SMU's quietly one of those more underrated Group of Five teams the last several years.
Mm-hmm.
I'll take SMU in that one. So there's some other games here. There's Maryland against Virginia Tech, Iowa State against Clemson, Oklahoma against Oregon, and North Carolina against South Carolina. So who do you have in those games?
Well, in the Pinstripe Bowl, I think I'm going to go with Maryland. I just don't really have a whole lot of faith in Virginia Tech, really. I mean, I don't have a whole lot of faith in Maryland, but I think if Tagovailoa is playing, I think he's their best hope. So I like him and his game. So I think that he might be able to do enough through the air and on the ground to squeak out a win. In the Cheez-It Bowl, it's kind of weird seeing Clemson there, but I'm going to take Iowa State to beat Clemson. I think Clemson. You mentioned NC State being one of those teams that have a better record than what they really are, and I think that's what Clemson is. They're 9-3, but I think that they had the luxury of playing in a weak ACC conference this year, and I think Iowa State is actually a well-rounded team. They're not real flashy or anything like that, but they're well coached, and I think that that's the type of team that Clemson really struggles with, is the disciplined team. So I'm going to go with Iowa State in that one. And then in the Alamo Bowl, both of these teams are going through coaching transitions and stuff, but I'm going to go with Oklahoma for the simple fact that if Caleb Williams is playing, then I think that he is kind of the X factor in all of this, and I think that he's better than any one weapon that Oregon has. So I'm going to go with the Sooners there. And then in the Duke's Mayo Bowl, Battle of the Carolinas, I'm going to go with UNC in this one. I think that they have a little bit more established within their program and that roster compared to what South Carolina has. I mean, Shane Beamer's trying to build that thing up from the ground right now. So I like where North Carolina's at, just a little bit better than South Carolina.
Yeah, in these games, I'll take Virginia Tech and the upset in the Pinstripe Bowl over Maryland. The Cheez-It Bowl with Iowa State and Clemson. Clemson, to me, I feel like they are extremely overrated. But I agree with what you said there with Iowa State and the fact their record isn't good, but they've had a hard schedule. But I want to go with Clemson because I feel like they're just going to be amped to play, ready to go. They're going to be ticked off they're not in one of these New Year's Six bowls in the playoffs like they have been for so many years in the past. I
Yeah.
feel like they're going to beat Iowa State in that one. Alamo Bowl between Oklahoma and Oregon. Both these teams, like you mentioned, are going through some coaching changes. I would be shocked if Oregon won this game. I feel like this is 100% Oklahoma's game for the taking, despite me feeling like both these teams are severely overrated. Oregon, every single time, aside from the Ohio State game, they've played big schools, they have been horrendous. They've got shut down against Utah twice. Oklahoma's inconsistent. And I feel like with Stoops coming in for this one-time gig, basically for the Sooners, there's no way they're going to lose this game, in my opinion, unless like a serious injury happens or something like that. And then North Carolina and South Carolina, I really like what Beamer's doing at South Carolina. I feel like they will be a good team for the next several years, and especially they got the huge transfer portal signing basically with Spencer Rattler. But obviously he's not going to be playing in this game. But with UNC, with Sam Howell, I feel like he's more the experienced quarterback, even though he's not really lived up to the hype this season. I'm going to take UNC in this game over South Carolina. So some other games here. There is the Music City Bowl between Purdue and Tennessee, Las Vegas Bowl between Arizona State and Wisconsin, the Gator Bowl between A&M and Wake Forest, the Sun Bowl between Miami, Florida against Washington State. So who do you have up in those matchups?
I think I would go with Tennessee. I think usually by now Tennessee is one of the teams that have already kind of fallen apart. But for some reason, with Josh Heupel in his first year, Tennessee has really started clicking, particularly on the offensive side of the ball. So I think I'm going to go with Tennessee here against Purdue. In the Las Vegas Bowl, this is a toss-up for me, really. I guess I would probably go with Wisconsin here. The more disciplined, fundamental team out of the two, I think. Jaden Daniels is a good quarterback for Arizona State, but I just don't know that they have quite enough in this game. I mean, Wisconsin is one of those teams that they could fall flat on their face just like they did a couple weeks ago against Minnesota. So everything I'm saying now could be completely false when this game gets played. But as of right now, I think I would go with Wisconsin. And then in the Gator Bowl, I would probably go with Texas A&M. I think they've just got too much talent, particularly on the defensive side of the ball for Wake Forest. I think they'll be able to slow down that Wake Forest offense and kind of keep them in check.
So in those games, to me, I have Tennessee over Purdue. Purdue, I would say, I've said several teams are overrated in this inconsistent in this video. I do not feel like there is a more inconsistent team in the country right now than Purdue. Braum has made them so inconsistent. When nobody gives them a chance, that's when they win. When people start hyping them up, that's when they suck. And Heupel's done a good job with Tennessee. I'll take Tennessee, Wisconsin against Arizona State. Aside from the loss or a couple weeks ago against Minnesota, Wisconsin had one of the longest winning streaks in the country. They were on fire. They looked like one of the better teams in the country. I still think they're going to win the bowl game against Arizona State, A&M, and Wake Forest. Wake Forest, to me, I feel like they're one of those teams who every single time they've played, even a good team, they have not played good. They were undefeated going up against North Carolina. North Carolina's record at the time was not good. They were not living up to expectations that they were heading into the year, and they end up losing against North Carolina and giving up over 40 points in that game. So to me, I trust Jimbo Fisher and A&M much more than I do Wake Forest right now. And then these final, non-New Year's Six bowls, there is Miami, Florida against Washington State, Boise State against Central Michigan, Arkansas against Penn State, Iowa against Kentucky, and Kansas State against LSU. So who do you have in those five bowl games?
Okay, I'll rattle these off real quick because I really don't have a ton to say about each one of these teams, but I think I would probably go with Miami. I think Tyler Van Dyke has been pretty good for them since he took over, so I'd go with Miami. I would go with Boise State over Central Michigan, and then in the Outback Bowl, I would go with. I think I would have to go with Arkansas over Penn State. And then in the Citrus Bowl, this one's kind of a toss up, but I don't trust Iowa's offense enough to beat Kentucky, so I'm going to take Kentucky here. And then in the Texas Bowl, LSU and Kansas State. This one's interesting. I'm assuming that Garrett Nussmeier, the freshman quarterback for LSU, is probably going to start with Max Johnson just recently announcing that he's going in the transfer portal. And so I think I would go with Kansas State, honestly, in this one. I think LSU is just, they've been surrounded with uncertainty all year. Granted, at times they haven't played bad. Looking at the Florida game and the Alabama game, LSU's kind of exceeded, some of the expectations that we might have had at one point. But Kansas State's, they're not a great team, but they've kept it together, most of the year. So I think I'm going to go with Kansas State just for that simple fact.
So in these bowls, I'll take Washington State in the upsets over Miami, Florida. Boise State, they are down for Boise State. Like they are not living up to a normal year. Obviously, the departure of Brian Harsin in the offseason hurt them a lot this year. But I'm still going to take them over Central Michigan. Penn State, I would take them over Arkansas. You mentioned Iowa not really having a good offense. Kentucky, it seems like there's been times where their defense plays pretty well. This does not look like a good matchup for Iowa. I'll take Kentucky in this one. And Kansas State against LSU, I'll take an upset here. I'll take LSU over Kansas State. Lots of interesting bowl games, fun matchups that we've already talked about. So if there's maybe one or two matchups that we've already talked about, what are the top matchups that intrigue you the most that we've already kind of covered?
Well, I think we definitely hit on it kind of at the beginning with the Boca Raton Bowl with Appalachian State and Western Kentucky. I think that game is one of the most intriguing, just because they are two programs that finished second in their conference. They both lost in the conference championship, and they each bring something a little different to the table. You've got Western Kentucky, that's the open passing game and puts up a lot of points, versus Appalachian State, who really likes to run the ball, with their running backs, Peoples and Nate Noel. So I think that's going to be kind of a chess match, really. Like who can get their game plan to go the way they want it to, and kind of control what the other opponent does. I think that's going to be interesting to watch. As for another game, let me look here. I would, I find myself coming back to Louisiana and Marshall. It's an interesting matchup with the fact that Louisiana is a conference champion and Marshall is not. Nor did Marshall even play in their conference championship. I think that this is a game that Marshall could win, but like I said, when it comes down to the rosters, I kind of have a little bit more faith in what Billy Napier has done over the past 4 years compared to what Doc Holliday put together, for Charles Huff's first season. So I'm going with Louisiana in that one, but I think that is one that could be a very tight game, depending on how Grant Wells plays and how Grant Wells shows up at quarterback. I think that he's going to have to play one of his best games at Marshall for Marshall to come out with a victory in that one. Because Louisiana, I've watched them several times this year, and they are tough on both sides of the ball. They're just very well coached, and I know Billy Napier's not there now, but when he was, they always seemed like they were more prepared than their opponent. So it'll be interesting to see how Louisiana comes out and without not only Billy Napier but the rest of that staff. Really, most of them. But that'll be one to watch for. And our good friend, my cousin, your good friend, I should say, Braden, who's on the Marshall recruiting staff, is actually going to be at that game in New Orleans. So shout out to Braden.
Yeah, he said, he'd been able to do lots of stuff, throughout the week so far. I think he said he was going to the Pelicans Bucks game tomorrow. So I mean that'll be a lot of fun for him, with the Marshall and Louisiana game. You mentioned Appalachian State, West Kentucky. I feel like that is going to be one of the best games of the whole bowl season. I really feel like it has potential to be one of those last second plays and stuff like that. Two really, really good teams who are really underrated. Should be a great matchup. And with Marshall and Louisiana, honestly, I don't know why these two teams are playing each other. It makes no sense at all. I mean, Louisiana's a top three group of five team, in my opinion. Marshall at times did not look like they were a top three team in their own conference. And this is basically a home game for Louisiana. I mean, there is a ranked team who has, 12 wins right now, who Marshall has just 7. This is kind of a similar situation with Auburn and Houston. Houston, Auburn. Two teams who their win margins have a significant gap between each other, and I just don't get why these kind of matchups are happening. But I am intrigued for the Marshall game. I feel like if they end up winning, they have to play excellent football. Grant Wells has to play turnover-free football. They cannot shoot themselves in the foot like they have in games in the past this season, like Middle Tennessee and Appalachian State, and some other games as well. That should be a good game. We already kind of talked about Florida and UCF, and Iowa State and Clemson. To me, I feel like that has potential to be a really good game as well. So kind of moving forward to these New Year's Six bowls, there is in the Fiesta Bowl, Notre Dame between Oklahoma State, and the Sugar Bowl, there's Baylor against Ole Miss. In the Peach Bowl, there's Michigan State against Pittsburgh. In that game, Kenneth Walker and Pickett will both be out of that game. In the Rose Bowl, there's Ohio State and Utah. So who do you have in those 4 New Year's Six bowl games?
Well, starting with Notre Dame and Oklahoma State, I think I would go with Notre Dame right now. I think losing Brian Kelly actually gave them, some sort of motivation going into this game. I think that the players are probably going to want to come out and prove themselves and prove to the world that Marcus Freeman belongs as Notre Dame's head coach. So I think they're going to want to come out and win it for him. So I'm going to go with Notre Dame in that game. As for the Peach Bowl with Michigan State and Pitt, like you said, the two stars are going to be out in this game, which definitely makes me lose interest personally. But in that game, without those guys, taking that into consideration, I guess I would go with Michigan State. I don't know how Pitt's going to operate without a quarterback. I think that Michigan State will be able to survive. They'll be able to survive without Kenneth Walker, but I don't know that Pitt can do the same without Pickett. So I'm going to go with Michigan State. As for the Rose Bowl, man, this is tough because I think in a perfect world, Ohio State is definitely the better team, but I have questions about, is Chris Olave going to play? Is Garrett Wilson going to play? Who else might sit out for Ohio State? And then you've got Utah, who they've never been to the Rose Bowl before, so this is basically going to be like a national championship to them in a sense. So I want to say Ohio State, but something's telling me to just pick Utah. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. If I'm right, I look like a genius, I guess. I don't know. So I'm going to go with Utah on this one. And then for the Sugar Bowl with Ole Miss and Baylor, Matt Corral is playing, so I think I'm going to go with Ole Miss just because I think that he is a legitimate quarterback and should be a top 10, top 15 type draft pick in this year's NFL draft. I think he's that kind of talent. And I actually had him before the season pegged as my dark horse Heisman contender, and I think he may have even gotten snubbed a little bit from being a finalist. I'm not saying he should have won or anything, but I think maybe he should have been a finalist. But because he plays at Ole Miss and not one of the traditional powers, I think that he got screwed a little bit out of that. But I think he's going to want to come out and prove himself. So I'm going to go with Ole Miss there.
You mentioned Matt Corral was one of your dark horse Heisman picks heading into the year. Looking back, that was a great pick. Looking back at one of my dark horse picks, it was a god awful pick. I picked Emory Jones to be dark horse for the Heisman. Clearly that did not work out. I mean, especially because he's going to be entering, the transfer portal and everything. But with these games, with Baylor and Ole Miss, with Corral playing, I'll take Ole Miss in that one. Should be a fun game. Notre Dame and Oklahoma State. That should be an intriguing matchup. Oklahoma State normally has a high-powered offense. With Freeman, he's going to be a great head coach for Notre Dame, one of the best defense coordinators out there before he was named the head coach. I'll take Notre Dame in that one. I don't know if you call it an upset, but I'll take them in that one. Michigan State and Pitt. Michigan State, I mean, I'm not just stating the obvious because, Pickett is out. But even if it was just a good quarterback, this helps them so much because Michigan State has like the worst passing defense in the country, and Pickett's one of the best quarterbacks in the country. So This is a match made in heaven. Michigan State is so lucky. It's really hard for me to pick Pitt in this game now. So I want to take Michigan State. Ohio State and Utah. Ohio State could not beat Oregon. Utah beat Oregon twice. I was dead set on picking Ohio State to be in the playoffs, beating Michigan. Clearly, that did not happen. Even though I cannot stand Ohio State, I'm still going to stay with them. I want to have them beating Utah in the Rose Bowl, which I feel like it's going to be a better game, a closer game than people expect, especially like you mentioned with some of these guys like Olave and some of these other guys like Wilson who might opt out of the game for their draft resume. But those games should be great. And, the college football playoffs, there's 2 games here. There's Michigan and Georgia. I cannot wait for that one. That should be a great one. And then Alabama against Cincinnati. The first ever Group of 5 in the playoffs. Nobody thought this was ever going to happen. I mean, despite Cincinnati doing everything they needed to win this season, they still barely got in. So these games should be great. So who do you have in these 2 matchups? And who do you have in your college football championship game?
Well, I'll go ahead and start with Alabama and Cincinnati. I think most of the world is probably going to be rooting for Cincinnati to pull off the upset in this one. I just don't know that they have the horses to do it. So I'm going to pick Alabama to win the game, but as I watch the game, I'm going to be kind of cheering for Cincinnati. As for the Orange Bowl, I'm going to go with Georgia to beat Michigan. I think this is going to be a great game. I'm excited for this one. 2 similar playing styles. Where I draw the line is I think that Michigan's offense plays too much into what Georgia likes to do defensively. I don't know that they're going to have the same success with that inside zone running game like they did against Ohio State. This Georgia D-line was built to stop the run, and Michigan really relies on establishing the run to open up the pass, and I just don't know if that's ever going to come open for them. So I'm going to go with Georgia to beat Michigan, and then so I guess that leaves a rematch of Georgia and Alabama for me. So with that being said, from what I saw in the SEC championship, I think that Alabama exposes a lot of Georgia's defensive flaws, and that's in the secondary. I think Alabama can really spread them out. Now, I will say the one thing that concerns me about Alabama in that matchup again is if they don't have John Mechie. So, he's been rumored to possibly be out for the entire playoff. I haven't actually seen confirmation on that, but that's kind of the rumor going around. So if John Mechie is out, I think that it puts a lot more pressure on Jameson Williams and some of those young Alabama freshman receivers to step up. So, it could go either way, but I'm going to go with Alabama. They're the one with the Heisman Trophy winner. So I'm going to go with Alabama to beat Georgia again, as tough as that is, to win the national championship. And what's ironic is that this is probably Alabama's worst team they've had, since Nick Saban's first season. So, as crazy as that is, and I have them winning the national championship at this moment. But if I'm wrong and a team like Michigan upset Georgia, I could see Michigan probably even beating Alabama. So, I think it's all about the matchup. But I think with what Alabama does offensively, I think it exposes Georgia's defense more than it would, say, a Michigan defense, because with a spread passing offense, you saw what Michigan's defense was able to do against Ohio State. They were still able to get to the passer and apply some pressure. So if it's Michigan and Alabama, I think Michigan has a better shot than people realize. But if it's Georgia and Alabama, I like Alabama to beat them once again.
It's crazy because most people think Alabama will end up winning the national championship game, and I think that is a possibility. But 1 month ago, in my opinion, I felt like it was kind of obvious who the two best teams in the country were. To me, it was Georgia, it was Ohio State, and then after that, there was a big gap. I mean, just a couple weeks later, we're talking about, Ohio State's not even in the playoffs. Alabama humiliated Georgia in the SEC championship game when nobody really expected Alabama to win. Now everybody, is high on Saban and Bama. They think they're going to win it all. And, with their matchup against Cincinnati, I would love to see Cincinnati win, with the small school and everything, first time ever, Group of 5, being in the playoffs. Obviously, to me, I feel like if you say Cincinnati is going to win this game, you are 100% anti-Alabama, or you are a diehard Cincinnati fan. I saw a tweet the other day. Somebody said Cincinnati was going to win 35-23. That is so laughable to me. I feel like this might be close to first half, but in the second half, I feel like Alabama is going to kind of control the tone of the game. The second half, to me, I don't see this being within 10 points. Maybe like a 38-24, 38-21, something like that. There's no way, in my opinion, Alabama loses this game to Cincinnati. And then with Michigan and Georgia, this is an intriguing matchup. Really, aside from the, blowing the lead against Michigan State, Michigan really should be, undefeated right now. And you can maybe make a debate that they should be number one in the country. They did not lose that game to the Spartans. And then Georgia, who pretty much everybody thought who was the best team in the country the whole season, collapses against Alabama in the SEC championship game. This is going to be a good one. I feel like this has potential to be within one score, maybe like a 24-17, 24-21, something like that. It could go either way, but to me, I'm going to take the safe pick here and take Georgia. And then it'll be Alabama in Georgia, rematch of the SEC championship game we just saw a couple weeks ago. I know everybody, it's hard to bet against Nick Saban. I thought Georgia would win that game. I don't know. I guess I just like having the, not common pick, but I'll take Georgia over Bama. It's going to be a close game. I wouldn't be shocked at all, obviously, if Bama ended up winning, especially when you look at Nick Saban's, assistant coaches against Saban. Jimbo Fisher finally got the first win against Saban when it came to assistant coaches under Saban. I'll take Georgia, maybe like 27-21, something like that. But I really could go either way in this game.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. And really, if it were up to me, I would, I would want Michigan to beat Georgia and have a different matchup. I'm an SEC guy, but I kind of don't want to see a rematch of what we've already seen with Georgia and Alabama. I'd like to see Alabama, Michigan. I think that would honestly bring in more viewership. And it would be a good matchup. So, I'm hoping that as long as if Cincinnati doesn't pull off a miracle, I'm hoping that it's Alabama, Michigan. But my gut is just telling me Georgia and Alabama, and yeah, it could definitely go either way.
Yeah, I would love to see. It's very, very unlikely to happen. Cincinnati against Michigan. The whole state of Ohio will be cheering for Cincinnati in that game.
That would be crazy.
That would be awesome, but I would rather see Michigan over Georgia because it's more of an intriguing matchup. We already saw Georgia against Bama, and I mean, who's to say that might not happen again? I said I picked Georgia, but there is a good chance Alabama might end up winning that game. There are so many interesting, bowl games coming up. I mean, starting tomorrow, college football playoffs. We're having the first ever group of five in the playoffs. It's going to be one of the best bowl seasons in recent memory, in my opinion. And that really kind of about, really does it, for this video. So, TJ, can you kind of tell some of the listeners who can follow you on social media?
Yeah, you guys can follow me on Twitter at tshoemaker2423. And I also have my own podcast called the Section 111 Podcast. And you can find that on Twitter as well at Section 111 Pod. So get on there, check it out. You can find it on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. So get on there and listen, and just see if it's something that interests you, and if so, subscribe and follow me.
Yeah, I'll definitely put the links in the description below so people can check out your content and everything. Thank you all so much for watching. Make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Make sure to follow me, S. Hine Show, on Twitter, and the Sports Dude Hine Show on Instagram. Once again, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time on the Sports Dude Hine Show.